Welcome to the Agape Podcast. I'm Beck, a passionate, sold-out lover of Jesus who accidentally started a Christian singles ministry, and now I want to help as many people as possible to find their husband or wife while being super healthy and full of hope. So get ready for some real, raw talk about all things singleness and dating. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 4 of the Agape Podcast. My name is Beck and I am super excited to be with you today. I feel like I have my podcaster voice on, like, hello and welcome. No, okay, this is what I really sound like. Hello, welcome to the podcast. Oh gosh, isn't it funny? Guys, I'm so happy to be with you today and I am so excited to share some testimonies with you, or a testimony from recently, and to tell you about my story with my husband, Nick, and kind of how that came about, because I know there's some of you who have been asking me, actually quite a lot of you, who maybe don't know our story, and are like, hey, we want to actually know, how did you get engaged and married within 3.5 months? It's pretty crazy. So I'm excited to share that story with you. I'm super excited to be podcasting. Guys, I have to be real. I love podcasting because you can do it without pants on. I'm just going to say it. It's so much easier than video. Anyway, let's get into it. So, I'm just going to be really raw and really real and give you guys a testimony, because I really want to encourage ladies out there. If you, became a Christian, you were not a virgin when you became a Christian, or you've made some mistakes along the way, and you were believing the Lord for restoration of your virginity. This is something that I have had prayer for. I've had leaders pray for. Before I was a Christian, I was in sexual relationships. I got saved at 18, and for over 13 years I was celibate. So I was like really going after the Lord. And just like, okay, I am not going to obviously do anything in this area, because I trust the Lord and I believe that sex is between one man, one woman in the covenant of marriage. So I really guarded that area. And okay, you might, if you're a guy and you don't want to hear about this, you might want to forward, because I'm going to be a little bit explicit, but I really want to encourage the ladies and the guys too, if you're watching, about what the Lord listening. Yeah, you're not watching because, again, no pants. Just shorts. What the Lord is actually saying and what he can do. So, God really actually restored my virginity when I got married. And it was an incredible moment. Throughout my entire single season, I had said, you know what, I'm not going to use anything. I'm not going to use tampons. I'm not going to do anything kind of up there. I want to try and restore and have it completely untouched, so that on my wedding night, or when I have sex with my husband, it might not necessarily be the wedding night, that I can come as a virgin. And I really believe that I would bleed. And guys, it happened. Oh, I always hear these testimonies. I hear leaders like Chris Vallison talk about it in certain ministry schools that I've been at, other ones as well. They have prayed for us, and I just really believed. That was just so something on my heart, like, this is going to happen. And then it did. I actually bled after, Nick and I were intimate, and I was just like, wow, Lord, you are so faithful. Like, you are such a restorer of purity. You are such a restorer of just like a right relationship with you, and everything that the enemy came to steal, kill, and destroy, and really tried to get me to stumble before I was, saved, and even tried to tempt me while I was saved. It was so worth it for that moment of like, oh God, you restored all these things. You restored these decisions that I made when I didn't know that there was a better way, that there was a higher truth, and waiting for marriage was something that I just really, obviously as a Christian, was like, I get it now. I understand. Before I was a Christian, I didn't understand that. I didn't know why I was waiting. I remember saying to one of my boyfriends, oh no, I can't have sex before marriage. And he said, why? And I said, well, I don't know. I wasn't saved, but my family was Catholic. And so we kind of talked about that. or we didn't even talk about it. It was just kind of like this underlying, oh, that's what you do. That's what good people do. And so obviously when you have something like that you think is real, but you have no foundation, or you think is a good thing, but you have no foundation, you have no revelation, you're not saved, you don't have Holy Spirit, as soon as that gets pressed upon or pushed on, you crumble, and like there's no foundation, you have no reason to uphold it. And so yeah, it's just really beautiful if you're in that place, and you, guy or girl, obviously I'm a woman, so my testimony applies to women, but and you know what, I actually have lost my virginity before I'm married. I really just want to release that testimony over you, release the redemption that the Lord has for you, and release the restoration of your virginity back to you, and purity in that area. If you've been feeling condemned about it, if you've been feeling shame in this area, I just release the knowledge of your purity in Christ, of the fact that you are holy and blameless in His sight, and that He restores all things. And I truly believe that on your wedding day, you're going to have this same breakthrough, this same moment, or wedding day, or I say it wedding day, or when you have sex for the first time. Because honestly, guys, it's not always the day of your wedding. But I'm just saying, there's a lot of people who have had to wait, or I know some people where the woman, unfortunately, the morning of the wedding, had her monthly period come, and I was gonna try and be really like tiptoeing around and be like, monthly cycle, but I literally just was really like open up until this point, so there's no reason to sugarcoat it. She got a period, and yeah, they had to wait for like better part of a week. So, but she also had the experience as well of bleeding and God restoring her virginity. And so yeah, I have an amazing testimony from a friend about that. I have my testimony, and I'm really believing that God's going to do the same for you. And so I just want to impart that right now in Jesus' mighty name, that if you're listening to this, that the Lord has restored you. If you're a new believer in Christ, you're a new creation in Christ, and that everything that was lost is restored in Jesus. And I declare that in Jesus' mighty name. So anyway, shifting gears a little bit, today I want to answer some of these questions, or really the big question. Whoops, I just threw my pen. I get so gestury, I'm gesturing, and literally you should have seen my pen just went flying, which was in my hand. Nick doesn't like it when we're on video because I gesture so much when I talk that if he's next to me, I'm like, my hand is usually in his face. I'm like, it's the Eastern European in me, okay? Like, stop trying to repress me. So anyway, let me tell you about how Nick and I actually met. So I was leading a singles group, and I'd just come back from Australia, and I was in America. I was living in California, where I am right now, and I was like, oh, I want to start having events. I want to help singles to connect with one another. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do a hike. There's a hike nearby my house that I really enjoy, and I'm just going to get a group together and we can go and do this hike. And so I posted in the group, and a bunch of people said that they were going to come. So I was like, this is great. Now, around this time, there had been some like bushfires. I don't know if they call them bushfires here, like forest fires. And the air quality actually wasn't super great. It was pretty ashy. You literally, like, I would come out and my car would be covered in ash. And there was no fire around where I was, but the ash, like, I guess, traveled. And that meant that quite a few people actually just pulled out and said, hey, the air quality's not that great. I don't want to do it. And I was like, oh, it's nothing. We'll be fine. And so I showed up, and then 2 other people showed up, and everyone else bailed. And one of the people was Nick, and then the other person was a guy. And so I was like, oh yeah, hey, and he's like, hi, and he had his dog with him, and I was like, oh yeah, cool. Literally nothing. Like, I didn't hear bells. I didn't think anything of him. I did not think he was cute. I was not attracted to him at all. And I was like, oh yeah, hey, and we start hiking, and he gets really red, and now I know Nick gets really red. He is literally a ginger, so he's like a super redhead. He had like bright red hair when he was young, but now he's got like, it's kind of like more blondie red in his beard. and his skin gets so sunburnt. And I always say it's funny. I say, like, even he knows this. Like, I always thought I'd marry somebody who is dark hair, really tanned, and that was kind of like how my previous boyfriends have been, and like kind of taller. And Nick is taller than me, but he's redhead with the whitest skin, so he just goes red. He's got this like Scottish heritage. Anyway, and so we're hiking, and then a little bit of the way up, I turn around and he's like kind of hunched over. I can tell he's in pain. I'm like, hey, are you okay? He's like, oh yeah, I've just got a broken rib, but it's fine. I thought it healed, but it hadn't, but it's fine. I'll be fine. I was like, oh my gosh, are you alright? Like, why are you doing this with a broken rib? And he's like, no, I'll be good. And he literally like stayed behind me the whole way up. And I was like, wow, like he wasn't unfit. He was like keeping pace. He wasn't complaining. And the really interesting thing was his dog, he's like, Nick would say like, I've never seen Ruger do this before, but like his dog was by my side the whole time. And then he would run up, kind of scope out what was ahead, make sure it was safe, and then come back and stand beside me and walk beside me. And I'm not like a massive dog person. Like Nick is a dog person. Like that man was created to have a dog. But like for me, I'm not like a massive dog person. So I was like, oh, this is like, that's really cool. So yeah, his dog really liked me. Anyway, and so we did the hike and it was really fun. We chatted. I mostly actually talked to the other guy because the other guy was really chatty. Nick's more like a quiet, sit back unless he's got something to say kind of person. And he talked, but you know, he didn't feel the need to like keep something going the whole time. Anyway, and then at the end, the other guy left and it was just Nick and I was like, okay, see you, bye. And I left. And he told me afterwards that he had actually wanted to ask me out to dinner because little did I know that he actually had seen some Facebook Lives that I had done. So he actually came specifically to meet me. He got off work, he rushed home, he got changed, he made sure he smelled nice, and he rushed to get to the hike so that he could come and meet me because he apparently really wanted to meet me. And so he wanted to ask me out to dinner. And I actually think I got that vibe that he was going to be like, let's do something. And I was like, okay, bye. And just left because I was like, I don't want to be in a situation where I'm stuck with this guy and I have to like spend time with him or I have to be mean and say no. So I just left. And it's really interesting now because actually in our vows, Nick said something about how it was so prophetic that when we first met, he actually had a broken rib. And just spoke about Genesis and how, like, you know, the woman was taken out of man and made from his rib. It was just really incredible, the picture that the Lord was showing him, you know, on our wedding day of actually how we first met. So anyway, I kept having events and he just started coming to things. He actually wasn't doing the school of ministry that I was doing. So I always say he like weaseled his way into the group, but that's actually not entirely true because he did sign up for first year and then didn't end up being able to go. And so he had been admitted into the group. But also one of the leaders at the school of ministry had said to him, because Nick was kind of like, I don't have any friends that are single. All of my friends are married. And one of the leaders said, hey, you should join the singles group. And so he did, just to make friends. He was not intending on like meeting anyone or, you know, he just wanted to make friends. So he just kept coming to events and all of a sudden he just started showing up and we were having a VIP event. I was hosting a VIP event at this like mansion place that I'd found. We wanted to make a murder mystery and it was going to be all big, but because of COVID, we were like, okay, we're going to keep numbers really low. Like we had less than 10. And somebody said like, oh, hey, you know, can I invite Nick? And I was like, Nick? Who's Nick? I had met him, but I didn't remember him. And then she kind of described, and I was like, oh, I think I met him on a hike. Yeah, he seems fine. You can bring him. And so that was the first time we ever really like, you know, hung out properly. And we played games, and I have a game that I love, which he at first was not super like. He was like, okay, I'll play. By the end, he was so into it. He was like, he went and bought the game straight after the weekend. He loved it so much. And it was really funny because he had brought with him like 2 pairs, because we were going to dress up for dinner. he had brought with him 2 pairs of pants, 2 pairs of shoes, like nice shoes. Like, Nick is actually the bougie one out of the two of us. He's the one who owns a $900 pair of shoes. And I'm talking US. I will never spend $900 US, or anything on a piece of clothing. But he just like, he'll save up and he sees something of value and he knows he's going to have it for a really long time and he'll invest. And he likes looking good. So anyway, and then he brought different shirts because he didn't know what the vibe would be. I laugh about it now. He's so cute. Anyway, and so he comes out. We're all dressed up for dinner, but some of the guys haven't put in that much effort, and Nick has put in more effort, and he looks, pretty nice. But I didn't really comment on anybody else how they were looking because Nick felt like the most safe person that I would never be interested in. Who I was like, I didn't think he was unattractive, but I was just like, I looked at him like just, some guy. And so he was the only one I was like, hey, look at you. You like really showed up looking good. And so now he says like, oh yeah, you came up to me and you're like, oh, you're looking good. He was thinking like, oh, she, thinks I look good. And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, everyone looked quite nice, but you're the only one I felt was like so safe to go and say anything because you'd never get the wrong idea or never think that I would like you or that, anything would kind of happen between us because I don't know, in my mind, that was just like not even a possibility. I don't know if girls do this, but I know I do this. Like if I'm going to compliment someone, like, and I'll compliment guys and be like, hey, you look cool, you're good. But if I'm going to make like a big deal and be like, wow, you've put in effort, I usually won't do it with somebody I'm actually ever think I would be interested in. It just feels safer. So anyway, after that event, I had games nights and he would come. I just started becoming friends with him in a group setting. It wasn't anything, we never hung out one-on-one. Up until we started dating, we never hung out one-on-one. Well, that's not true. We were always around people, but we might have not been with friends. But we basically started becoming it was cool to have him around. He was really fun to play games with. We had this massive like competitive attitude, and it didn't bring out the best in us, but like all the time. But we were really good friends within that like competitive attitude. Anyway, and then the pivotal moment happened. October 3rd, 2020, I was leading this group and I just started to feel really like hopeless one day. And I don't normally I didn't really feel hopeless about my singleness. I'd been single for like 6 months at that point, and from May, so I don't know how long that is. But I just had this like hopelessness hit me that day, and I was like usually drunk on hope. God's got an amazing man for me. It's going to be incredible. And yeah, I just didn't feel that day. I felt quite like, I feel like there's despair here. Like, how's this ever going to happen? I felt like I was losing vision for it. Like, what is this even going to look like? And we had a meeting with with a group that we had at school, and my pastor was the leader of it. So there was like 50 of us on the call. And it was one of our first ever meetings, and it was all online because we couldn't be in person yet. And he said, does June 27th mean anything to anyone? And I was like, yes, that's my birthday. And you have to know that somebody else actually a week before that had said on a call that I was ministering, one of the guys on the ministry call had a word of knowledge about what was it? It was like the 27th of June, or like June 1990 or something like that. And that was my birthday, 27th of June 1990. And I was like, yeah, that's me. And he had prophesied, he was like, I just see marriage restoration. He's like, but he didn't think it was for me, but it was all about marriage restoration. And I was like, okay. And so literally like a week later, my pastor says 27th of June. Does that mean anything to anyone? And I was like, that's my birthday. I literally just like, before I even thought about it, I unmuted. Oh yeah, that's my birthday. And he goes, I see wedding cakes all around you. And I was like, yes. I was like, what? I receive it. Because he didn't really know me much then. And I was like, and he's like, do you want to be married? And I was like, yeah, I lead like these singles groups. I, of course, want to find someone. And so he's like, hang on, let's not get ahead of ourselves, because we obviously have a rule when prophesying that we don't prophesy maids, dates, or babies. So he was like, hang on, I need to check in with the Lord. And this man is incredibly prophetic, super led by the Spirit. And he says to me, no, he says to the whole group, you do not have permission to ever prophesy this, okay? Listen to me now. You cannot prophesy this. You do not have permission. But Beck, I see you getting married. And he just releases this word over me about me getting married within 6 months. Or like releases the word and then prays that it'll be within 6 months. It'll be an acceleration. And I was destroyed. I still have the word. I listened to it so much in the days after that, and I was wrecked. Like I was sobbing on the call because God just saw me. He knew my heart. He knew that this was the desire of my heart, and I'd been waiting for so long. I felt like, for 13 years I've been a Christian and haven't really had any dates, or I've had like a couple, like 2 like 3-month relationships here and there throughout that time, and then most recently like a 6-month one, which wasn't the person. I was like, when is this ever going to happen? And so what I did that day, I thought, okay, Lord, what can I do to partner with this word? I want to partner my faith with this word. And I went to TJ Maxx and I started walking around the store, and I was like, what can I get? What can I buy as like a prophetic action? And I saw these like flute glasses, and they're on sale too, which is good because I didn't have a lot of money. And they were just glasses that you would drink out of, but they were really fancy. And I thought, oh, these would be great to drink out of on my wedding day, as we do communion or as we sit on our like bridal party seats. So I bought them and put them in my room as like kind of a reminder. And it's really interesting because after I bought them, I put them up there and I realized that the brand was David something. It was like David something. And my pastor who had prophesied that over me, his name was David. And I was like, wow, you cannot make this stuff up. So I called my mom and we were just doing like a catch up, and I was like, oh, by the way, I'm getting married in 6 months, within 6 months. And she's like, who to? I said, I don't know who they are yet, but I'm going to be getting married. Just FYI, just get prepared, okay? You might have to come to America. And so she was like, oh my goodness. So I was like, just wait, it's going to happen. So anyway, meanwhile, I share this word with Nick. Again, because I'm like, if I had thought he was ever a prospect, I wouldn't have told him, because I was like, well, that will scare him off. If I'm like, hey, by the way, I'm going to get married in 6 months. If he even liked me, that would be like, whoa, pressure. So I was like, I'm obviously not going to tell somebody that I'm actually interested in, or, I start to get to know in a romantic way, but I could tell him. And so again, we just kept hanging out, and then I wanted to go to the gym and I needed some accountability, and he went to the same gym as me. So we were like, hey, why don't we go to the gym together? So we started working out, and we had to have some brave communication, because I realized that going to the gym together for me meant something very different than what it meant for Nick. For me, it meant, hey, let's like meet at the gym and then go kind of our separate ways and do our own thing, but kind of be in the same area so that, we can't flake out or just not show up or like not work out. But to Nick, it meant, hey, I'm going to train back. And I'm going to be like, let's do this and let's do that, and push her to like really stretch herself. And then there were some things he's like, try this. I'm like, I don't want to do that. I have my rhythm. I know what I want to do. And so it was really good because we got to resolve conflict. I was like, hey, I think we've got some miscommunication around like our expectations about like working out together. And he was like, oh yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I thought you wanted me like kind of train you and encourage you. And I was like, no, I just wanted to like meet at the same place and do our own thing. But like, we can still hang out and like we can be in different machines side by side, but you don't have to like train me. And he was like, oh, okay. And we moved past that really easily, because I remember whenever you have like an early on conflict or something like that, you haven't had a conflict with someone before, it's really telling, because I kind of just like, okay, let's see how we come back from this, because it kind of goes one of two ways. Either the person's like, oh, that's fine, and you resolve it and you move on, or the person withdraws from you because you've brought something up, and then hey, actually, we didn't have the kind of relationship to sustain this kind of discussion, which means that actually this is probably not the kind of person that I want to really invest a lot of time and energy into, because I can't be real about if, things are hurting me or, what's going on with my heart. They're going to pull away because they can't handle like honest discussion or how to do conflict well. So we just kept being friends, and I realized I really loved having him around. I really enjoyed hanging out with him. He was really fun. He never, ever, ever like made a move on me. He never said anything about that at all. He actually told me about a girl. So I had a speed dating night, which, long story short, I had COVID. So the day before, I realized I had COVID and I couldn't host it. So somebody else had to host it. But I organized this whole speed dating night. And there was a bunch of people who went, and he met this beautiful, beautiful, godly woman there. And they started getting to know each other. And I was like encouraging him. I was like, she's amazing. She's so cute. I didn't really know her. I just saw her photo and I was like, man, way to go, Nick. And he's like, thanks. And I was like, go for it. Go for gold. And we just became like best friends. Or some people were like, you guys are like brother and sister. I was like, yeah, we are. And we would bicker like an old married couple, like especially around driving. I'm like, can you not drive like that? And like, he's like, it's fine, and rah, rah. And people would be like, guys, it's okay, like you don't have to like fight. And we're like, oh, and we'd be like, oh, we're not fighting, and then we'd go back to just being normal and laughing about it, and nothing ever was like a big deal. And yeah, I just really enjoyed having him around. I remember I had issues with my car. My battery died, and I was like, what do I do? And so I told Nick, oh, my battery keeps dying, and I keep missing things or being late for school things because I can't get there because it's really sporadic. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it doesn't. And he said, okay, cool, this is what we're going to do. Tomorrow morning I'm going to come over before work. Or actually, I don't think he had work that day. I think it was a Saturday. So he's like, I'm going to come over and I'm going to jumpstart your car. Then I'm going to drive with you to go and get a battery. And then if you want, we can go and get a coffee. And I was like, really? And so he showed up at my house early that morning. He jumped out of my car. He had done research as to where to get the battery that I needed. Took me to the place. Oh, and he also said, like, while they do the installation, like, we can go and do something. Like, we can go get coffee. But actually, they did it super quickly. So then afterwards, he's like, do you want to go get a coffee? And so we went and just, like, hung out for a little bit. And he just, like, really looked after me. Like, he went straight into action mode. And for somebody who doesn't have a brother or a father around, I just really appreciated how much he wanted to look after me. And we even had a game night one night, and he brought over cut up apples, almond butter, and honey. And those are three of my favorite things, because usually when people bring stuff over, it's all chips and dip and stuff, and it's like super unhealthy. And so he actually brought the things that I liked, and I was like, Nick, and he's like, I know you like these things, and I just wanted to bless you. I didn't know this at the time. When we started dating, he told me, but he had actually prayed and said, Lord, what is my role in Beck's life? And God had said to him, you're to show her how a man should treat her. And so without any agenda, he never thought I would date him or like him or anything. He was just my friend, and he just treated me how a man should treat me. And he just showed me like what it was to just be really like looked after. And yeah, I just was like, wow, that's really amazing. So anyway, he'd gone on a few dates with this girl, and I was talking to him about her and kind of giving him advice and encouraging him, and she was really cool. And then literally from one day to the next, it was the strangest thing. I think they'd gone on like 3 or 4 dates just to get to know each other. And then she was like, hey, I really feel like I need to move to literally like the other side of the country. And then like a couple days later, she just left. All of a sudden, she just left. She just disappeared. And he was really upset. He was sad. Well, he wasn't really upset, but he was sad. He's like, I was kind of enjoying getting to know her. I guess we're just going to kind of get to know each other online and see if anything happens. But he wasn't like super excited about that prospect, but was like, I guess that's what we have to do. So a little bit later, she had moved, and I said to him, I haven't had a date in like a month. Like, I was just thinking about it, and I was like, that's kind of annoying. And he said to me, hey, why don't I take you out for a friendship date? You pay for yourself, I pay for me. And we, there's been some date things that I've been wanting to do for, someone. And, I'd love to just take you out and show you how a man should treat you and how worthy you are to be pursued. And I was like, oh, Nick, that's so sweet. Okay. And so he wanted to take me on this really beautiful, elaborate date, like an hour and a half away. And it was going to be like a progressive dinner, but it was going to be a surprise. But the day before, I was like, I'm really tired and I don't want to do this like massive road trip. Is it okay if we go somewhere a little closer? And he was like, absolutely. And so he kind of, I mean, he planned, but he planned it in his head that we were going to go to there's like a mountain about 45 minutes away, and there's like it's like a little mountain town. It's really cute. And so he took me there and we just talked the whole way, and it was really fun. And we went and had dinner, and then we kind of walked around, and even during dinner, I was like, oh, this is really fun. Like, he's just, conversation just flowed. He was telling me the funniest stories about some of his like really bad dates where he got like catfished once by this woman. And I was just laughing, and then I was like, hey, you have to tell the waitress. And so he tells the waitress, and the waitress is cracking up. And then the waitress is like, something similar happened to me. And we're just like vibing, and it's just like, we were just getting along really well. And then, we just walked around. I went and got some chocolates, and I was like, let's play some Russian roulette with these chocolates and see if we like them, see if we don't. And he was like, oh, this is really fun. So after that, I was like, wow, that was a really fun night. That was cool. And I didn't know this at the time, but later he told me, he's like, after that, I was like, I could do that again. He was like, I could really do that again. But he was like, well, if we were ever to do that again, it would have to be a date, and then everything would change between us. And he knew, like, I was not there. He even says to me now, if I had ever asked you out, you would have said no. And I was like, yes, I would have. Because I was becoming his friend. He was becoming my best friend. But he still was, I'm like, he's not my list at all. Like, I'm wanting an entrepreneur who's super outgoing, who's like a self-starter, who's looks a certain way, and I just wasn't attracted to him. So I was like, I was just like, I just couldn't get over that in my head. Couldn't get past that to even see him. So anyway, by this point, it's like mid-November. And I'm like, you know what? I received this word about getting married like a month and a half ago. How am I supposed to get married in 4.5 months if I'm not even dating this person yet? Like, how is this going to happen? And I remember saying, like, well, if he was already in my life, like, wouldn't I have noticed him already? Or he can't be that amazing, because I'm like, how am I going to marry someone after 4.5 months? Is it going to be a stranger? Like, it does not feel good. I just couldn't figure out. I was like, Lord, how is this going to happen? Like, what? And then one night, everything changed, you guys. Like, oh my goodness. It's like, I'll tell you what happened, and then you can judge for yourself how the veil was lifted. So I have my home group every Wednesday night, and we finished at like 9. And I was like, I don't want to go home yet. Where will I go? Like, who would I like to hang out with? I was like, Nick. I'll see if Nick's free. I'd love to hang out with him. So I give him a call, and he says, hey, yeah, like, I'm just at family night, because he used to have family night every Wednesday night with his friends. He's like, but you can come. And I was like, oh, okay. No, I said, sorry, I called him, and then I heard that there was a background music noise, and I was like, oh, hey, I was just going to see if you wanted to hang out, but I can see that you're busy, like, I'll let you go. And he was like, no, come, like, you can come and hang out with us. And I was like, are you sure? And so he gives me the address. I think it's a random address. It actually is his house. And so I rock up, I'm like, oh, it's at his house, okay. And so I go in there, and I meet his friends for the first time, and they're playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm like, oh, great. Didn't tell me you were doing this before I came, and now I have to participate. And I really like games, but this one I was like, oh, it's kind of, I didn't know what it was, but I was like, it sounds kind of nerdy. I know they talk about it a lot on Big Bang Theory. And Nick's like a real man's man too, so he's got kind of this like mix between like super nerdy and then like he's like a tradesman, and he's been like shoveling rock all day. It's just a really funny like combination of the things that he likes. Anyway, and I'm like, okay, I'll play, and I'm looking around the room, are there any swords in the room? And like, that's literally what you kind of have to ask. And then like, yes, you got a sword, you picked it up, now you have weapons. I'm like, oh, great. Anyway, so while we're doing that, Nick gets a call from one of his friends. And this is somebody that I didn't know at the time, but Nick had kind of been like pastoring / helping. and he just met him randomly out one day. And so Nick's like, hey, I'll be right back. And he goes outside and he comes back in a little bit later, and he's got this guy with him, and the guy's like super hunched over. He's looking down. He looks really ashamed, and he's high. I can tell he's high on something, and Nick's just loving on him. He's like just caring for him, just guarding his heart. And he comes around behind him and he hugs him, puts him in a chair, comes around behind him and hugs him and says, you're safe, you're loved, you're here, like, it's okay. And the guy's like crying basically. And Nick says, like, do you want anything to eat? Do you want anything to drink? And he just starts just caring for him. And I'm watching him and I'm starting to like cry a little. And I don't cry ever. And so I'm like, ooh, what is this? And I literally, as I see him holding him, my heart catches fire. So it's the only way to describe it. It's like if you've ever had anxiety when your chest gets all tight, it was like that manifestation, but there was a tangible flame. Like there was a fire in my chest. And I was like, oh my goodness, what is this? And then he goes to him, here, I'm gonna make up a bed for you. Because what I didn't say is Nick was a manager of like a transitional home for people who are coming out of like drug addiction. So he was like managing it, kind of pastoring the people, loving on them. He has a crazy testimony of being set free from drugs. He was a drug addict. Oh, yeah, I mean, he was a drug addict, but he was also a drug dealer for a long time before he got saved, and he's been saved for, I think, 11 or 12 years now. So back in his former life, that's what he did. And so now he just like really has a heart for those people. And so he made up a bed for the guy, put him to bed, and then he came back out and he was telling us about him, and he just had such a heart for him. Nick started like getting teary and trying not to cry, and then I was trying not to cry, just looking at him, like just talking about how, he's like, he had such a heart for this guy. This guy had professed to be Christian, but he was growing marijuana, medical marijuana as his business, and, which we obviously don't agree with. But Nick was like, there's no Christians. As soon as he says that, no Christians want to come alongside him. No Christians want to love him and care for him. And Nick's really like, he just needs some people to like see the gold in him and to help him walk out of this lifestyle. And Nick was like really trying to be that person for him. And this guy had just gotten high and was really ashamed and didn't know where else to go. So we had sat outside Nick's house for like 45 minutes before he even got the courage to message him. So Nick really just was like, I'm going to walk through this with this person. It was just so incredible. And then, but I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, like what's going on with my heart? I'm feeling so raw. And eventually it got late. So Nick walks me out to my car, and we're standing by the car, and we talk for like an hour by my car. And we're just chatting. But I realized at the end, I'm like, oh, I want him to kiss me goodnight. Like I feel like drawn to him. I want him to kiss me goodnight. And then I did the most awkward thing. I was just like, okay, see you, bye. And I get in my car and drive away. And to this day, Nick's like, yeah, you all of a sudden got really awkward, and we're like, okay, bye. And then got in the car and left. I was like, I know, because I didn't know what was coming up in my heart. Like I just was like, what is happening? And so the whole way home, I'm just like, no, Jesus, no, like what's happening to my heart? And I literally was like, no. And I messaged one of our mutual friends. I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm developing feelings for Nick. I don't know what to do. I messaged a bunch of friends because I was like so blindsided by it. It was like literally I was watching him and the veil was like removed, and I like saw him for the first time, and I saw how incredible he was and how much he had loved me and protected me and guarded my heart, how much of a man he was, how he was always about like, how can I serve back? There was even times he was at a party and we had made plans to hang out, and he left before the party was over to come and honor our plans. And even I asked him now, I was like, why did you do that because you liked me? And he was like, no, he's like, I felt the Lord say to treat you how a man should treat you. And I wanted you to know what it was like to be put first for once, because you have so many people pulling on you. I don't think there was anybody that was making you a priority in their life. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, who are you? And yeah, it was just crazy. And so I'm feeling all vulnerable. And the next morning I tell my roommate, and my roommates flip. They're so excited. They're like, woohoo, we love Nick. I'm like, okay guys, like settle down. I don't know if I like him. Like maybe it was just like a random feeling. Maybe my heart's just like more open, but like it's not for him. It's just in general. I'm like trying to talk myself out of the feeling. And then I go to school and I had somebody else that I was kind of getting close to, not romantically, but there was another guy and he was really nice to me and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like maybe I like him too. What is happening? I was like, oh, my heart just felt so open and raw and vulnerable. I've never felt like that. It was crazy. I was just start crying. And then I saw my ex-boyfriend in the same day. And then, oh, this was so dumb. But I drove past him. I parked. I can't believe I'm saying this. And then I walked to where he was because I wanted him to see me. I walked past him, walked to where he was, pretended to do something, and then went back to my car. So dumb. Oh, the things us girls do. Because I was like, I just want him to see me. I feel like I'm looking cute today. I want him to notice me. Again, because I was like, I don't know what's going on in my heart. I'm like, do I like him still? I didn't, but I was like, I don't know. And then the next day, I went on a hike, and there was a bunch of people on this hike, and another one of my friends, who's been my friend for a while, he was being super nice to me. And again, my heart was like, oh my gosh, do I like him? Like, do I actually like this guy? Like, what? And then one of the guys on the hike, who I didn't know, was just really friendly with me. Like, he wanted to sit with me whenever we sat down. He's like, oh, I want to sit in back. He was helping me. He was like trying to hold my hand to like lift me as we were hiking. If like there was a bit where it was a little bit like tumultuous. And even my guy friends, my two really close guy friends were like, yeah, he's into you. And I was like, this is so weird. Like, this never happens. It was like something in the spirit was showing, like, oh, I'm getting ready. Like, I'm available. Even though I'd been available for so long, and, you know, it was just crazy. And so by the third day, I realized, okay, I have these feelings for Nick, but it's not fair for me to like just pull back from him, because he won't know why, he won't know what's going on. And I think I need to articulate where I'm at. I prayed about it all day, and I was like, I just need to let him know. And I thought, in the back of my mind, I was like, I think when I say something, it's going to make a difference. I don't know, I think he'll be interested, but I'm not 100% sure. And he was sort of seeing this other girl too. So I was like, I really want to honor that. Like, nothing's been like committed to, but like they were getting to know each other. But then our mutual friend was like, nah, he seems pretty set on her back. I don't know. And I was like, oh, okay, well, regardless, you know, I had seen him the Thursday and the Friday, and my heart was still really raw and open towards him, and really like kind of cute is the best way to put it. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And I was trying not to show it. It's kind of like in Clueless, where she's like, she realizes she's in love with Josh, her like kind of stepbrother, and she's like, now I don't know how to act around him. I was kind of like that. So I think he started to pick up on like, oh, what's going on back? And so I was like, I have to say something, and I couldn't wait, because ideally it'd be better in a face-to-face, but I'm very like, when I think of something, I just do it. So I sent him a voice message on Facebook, and I was like, hey, I just wanted to let you know that I think we need to have better boundaries in our friendship, because I know it's really easy to develop feelings in like circumstances like this, and I feel like I'm starting to, and I know that you are getting to know somebody else, so I really want to honor that, but I just need to tell you where I'm at. And so I think we need to take a step back from our friendship, and like hanging out, even though we weren't okay, so this is a side note, even though we weren't hanging out one-on-one, we there were still people around. There was usually groups, or we were at the gym, you know, but we were still spending time together like quite frequently. And so I was like, I just think we need to step back from that. And he was like, oh, sorry, okay. And that was the voice message that I sent him. I should also say, I forgot to mention a really big thing. On the Friday night, so I sent him that message on the Saturday, but on the Friday night, I had asked him, I had to do some online Zoom ministry, and we were like ministering to the nations. It was amazing, but I was really hungry, and so I kind of hinted around, and he ended up bringing me food. He brought me some tacos, and he dropped them off. And when he left, and it was something that most friends would do and I would feel totally fine with, but when he left, it felt very like, oh, this is something I would get a boyfriend to do. And he was like, yeah, that felt really boyfriendy. He told me later. I was like, yeah. So that's why on Saturday I was like, I knew I had to send this voice message because I was like, oh, I'm realizing that I'm actually kind of liking him. Oh, and I did say like, I'm having these feelings, but I'm not sure how I feel about them. So anyway, he responds and he says to me like, whoa, I'm really sorry if I gave you the wrong idea. I need some, and I'm like, oh, rats, he's not into me at all. And then he says like, I need some time to digest this. I'll see you at Friendsgiving, which was the next day. So I was like, okay. And I actually, it was funny because that night, the Saturday night, I actually had a dream about my ex-boyfriend being with someone new, and I was totally okay with it. And even though I felt like I'd really gotten over him, I felt like that was the Lord being like, hey, you're really ready to move on. Like there was a final like close of the door. And then the Sunday morning, woke up, Friendsgiving was later that day, and one of my roommates, her boyfriend was over, and he was like, hey, let's play Marry, Kiss or Kill. And I was like, okay. And then we went around in the group and eventually got to me, and they were like, who would you marry, kiss or kill? And they kept putting Nick in groups with people, and I kept picking him every time to marry. And I was like, oh, this is really telling. And then they put him in a group in the 3 with the 2 other guys that I'd kind of been attracted to. And they're like, who would you marry, kiss or kill? And I was like, I would marry Nick. And they were like, ah! And I was like, oh, this silly game has actually really exposed my heart and where it's really at. Oh, goodness, you know. And I had even said to my roommates, I was like, there can be no guys that come over this week because I'm falling for everyone. And like, I don't know what's happening. My heart is so open. And that really is what it felt like. But that game, that silly game, actually brought quite a lot of clarity. And then I went to Friendsgiving, and my friends walked up to me, to my married friends, and he just said to me, Beck, you look really, he's like, oh, I don't want to say sad. You look really raw. And I was like, yeah, I am. And I started crying. And as I was crying, I saw Nick walk in behind them. And guys, it was so awkward. We went the entire Friendsgiving without saying a word to each other. The way I had read his message, I thought he said, I'll talk to you tomorrow. He had actually said, I'll see you tomorrow. So I was waiting for him to approach me because I wanted to give him space and like honor the process that he was going through. He was like, oh, she won't even look at me. I was feeling all uncomfortable and like I didn't know what to do. And to be honest, he looked like death. I didn't know this at the time, but he had not slept at all that night. He had been crying. He had gone out for a walk with the Lord in the morning, and he had gotten lost. And God had, it turned into like a 4-hour hike or something. And he almost was like late to, like he was a little bit late to the Friendsgiving, but he almost didn't make it. He looked so miserable. You guys, like he didn't smile once. His face was down. He was alone. He looked like a really sad puppy. And I didn't want to go up to him. I was like, I want to talk to him, but this isn't the time to have like a really deep conversation with all these people around. And like, even his friend was like, who had just met me, just a little bit before, was like, isn't that Beck? And Nick's like, yeah. And he's like, aren't you two like really good friends? And Nick's like, yeah. And his friend's like, it's like she doesn't even know you. And he's like, yeah. He was like super hurt. And I was super like hurt because I was like, I don't know what to do. Do I go up to him? Do I not? And so I didn't. I was like, I'll just wait and see what happens. And in the meantime, this guy had come and he had started talking to me. And to preface, he was pretty attractive. And he had been somebody that I'd known from school the year before. And so he and I had gone inside and just started chatting. And then he's like, hey, you want to sit down? So we had sat down on a couch together and we were chatting. I guess it looked kind of intimate, but we weren't having a very like light and fluffy conversation. I didn't know him super well, but I was actually kind of calling him up higher on a few things and being like, hey, like this actually made me feel like this. And like, you know, if you, loving women well might look like, so I was kind of, you know, Nick seeing it, he was like, oh great, she's over me. She's having this like romantic conversation with this guy. And I was like, actually it wasn't romantic at all. It was kind of the opposite. And so he he had wanted to leave. I didn't know this at the time, but he had wanted to leave the whole time. But because he had invited somebody who didn't know anyone else, he was like, I couldn't leave him there. So he stayed. And then as soon as the friend had said, hey, I'm going, Nick was like, cool, me too. And he just left. And I didn't know if I should say goodbye. Like his friend, like our mutual friend who Nick had invited came and said goodbye to me, but Nick hung back. And I was like, oh, so awkward. And anyway, he left. I was like, oh, I should probably like go and message him. But then they started dancing and I really enjoyed dancing. And they were like, Beck, stay. And so for like another hour, I'm like dancing and like living my best life. Meanwhile, I didn't know this, but Nick was like crying and driving around the city all upset and not knowing what to do. And then I get home. I straight away go to my phone as soon as I'm finished dancing. I kept checking it, like, has he messaged me? Does he want to catch up? He hasn't messaged me. I'm like, oh my goodness. So I finally message him and say like, hey, do you not want to talk to me anymore? And he says like, no, I do and I did. I did and I still do. And I was like, okay, well, can we talk tonight? And he was like, yeah, but it has to be, like, I need it to be in person. So I was like, absolutely. So we made arrangements for him to come over to my place. My roommates were home, but they were going to stay upstairs because I was like, hey guys, Nick's coming over. It's going to be like a pretty big chat. And they were like, okay. And so I was like fully prepared. I was like, this could go one of two ways. But because he had said to me like, hey, I'm really sorry if I gave you the wrong idea, I'm thinking he's not interested in me. And because I had said like, hey, I'm having these feelings, but I'm not sure how I feel about that, he's thinking like, oh, she's not into me at all. Like she's having these feelings, but she's like fighting them and she doesn't want them. So we both go into this conversation thinking it's going to go bad. And so he comes in. I didn't realize this, but he actually left his shoes on. He didn't take them off at the door. And he told me later it was because he thought he'd be leaving in like 5 minutes and he didn't want this awkward like putting your shoes back on moment where I'd be watching him and he'd be really uncomfortable. So I was like, hey, we sat down on the couch, we're like facing each other. And I was like, and he just started talking and he was like, hey, like when you messaged me yesterday, you just dropped this bomb and it totally like rocked my world. And he told me about his process, about how he hadn't slept all night and he had been crying and I could tell he'd been crying a lot. And he was just really like tortured because he like, I don't know what to do. On one hand, you know, there's you, and the other hand, I'm like getting to know this girl. And I was like, yeah, I totally understand. I just had to let you know where I was at. But he told me a story about going for a hike with the Lord. And basically what the Lord had revealed is that he was like, Beck's my best friend and I can't lose her. Like I can't lose her out of my life. And yeah, it was, he looked at me and he told me the whole story about going for the walk with the Lord, what the Lord had brought up, what the Lord had revealed, and the Lord had told him to say like exactly what he was feeling, what was on his heart. And so he took me on the scenic route. He told me everything. And half the time I'm like, okay, he likes me, wants to date me. The other half I'm like, okay, it's a no. Like I wasn't sure until the very end. I was like, just get to the end. And he was like, he looked at me and he started crying and he's like, I adore you. Like I cannot lose you. So I guess I want to pursue you. And I was like crying. We were both crying. It was so emotional. And, then I was like, okay, like, let me tell you what happened for me. And I told him my whole process, which was really funny too, because then he's waiting. He's like, is she in or is she not? Like, where's she at? And I was like, yeah, like, this is not what I was expecting. I don't, like, we were just kind of trying to do our best in the moment. Like, obviously in hindsight, we could have done some things better. But we were just like, whoa, this thing just came out of nowhere and we did not know how to handle ourselves. And I was like, you know what, I would really like that. And he was like, what? And I was like, what? And so then we had to go, okay, well, now we need to, he's like, I need to talk to this girl and like, just let her know what has happened. Because even though they, you know, weren't official, they weren't like fully dating or anything, or they weren't a couple, he'd still got enough dates with her and they'd been talking for a little bit that we were like, okay, we need to honor that. And in hindsight, it would have been good not to have the conversation we were having until he had spoken to her. But because everything happened that day where he was like, oh, this is actually how I'm feeling, and like we need to talk about it because it's affecting our friendship. It was just a very like messy kind of situation. So I was like, okay, yeah. And so we told my roommates, and they were there. They came downstairs, and they're like, oh my gosh. And so we got to just like watch a movie. We all watched a movie with him, and we because it was nice. He wasn't just like, okay, I'm gonna go. He's like, do you want to watch something and like hang out for a bit? And I was like, okay. So we did, and like we didn't like kiss or anything, obviously, but my roommates were there, and we just got to like have a bit of fun and not leave it in this like super emotional state. And so the next day he contacted her and explained and was like so sorry and so apologetic and miserable again, and just explained, and she was incredible. Like she had so much grace and so much maturity. I think the Lord was just really on it because she was like, I understand, and like it was just really understanding, really like championing us. It was crazy. And then I had thought, okay, I should reach out to her too and just be like, hey, like this was not my intention. I'm so sorry about this. And then she actually contacted me first and was just so full of encouragement and love, and had a few questions that I answered. And then I got to just encourage her and be like, hey, like, God has someone amazing for you, and like, I want to help you find that person, and I'm going to keep an ear out. And like, we just ended up joking, and it was just really like, oh, I'm like, this is how kingdom works. Like, this is just the favor of the Lord, because, if she had have been, if she hadn't have understood, or if she had have been like less mature, I mean, she could have put us on blast. She could have posted things. She could have just been really unkind, and it's not even like it wouldn't be warranted, but she really saw our hearts. She really saw the struggle. We let her into like, hey, this is like been super hard. And Nick, for him, it was so hard, because he really didn't want to hurt her, and he had affection for her. And even now when we talk about her, we're like, Nick's like, she's amazing. I'm like, she is literally amazing. Like, oh my gosh, we are praying for her to find an incredible husband. Just the way that she responded was incredible. And so yeah, then we were like okay, well, that was kind of addressed, and when it was all good and we felt at peace, we're like, okay, we're officially a couple now. And we started dating, and it was incredibly awkward. Our friends were like, oh, some people were like super happy for us, some people like they rushed, this isn't gonna last. It was really hard hearing those kinds of things, because I think no one really, they weren't in the process, and it was hard when they were closer friends, and we forgave them. They don't even know that hurt us. We've just forgiven them and moved on, but it was kind of a really weird, messy time. And I was really uncomfortable still, because I was really awkward, because I felt like I knew that this is the person that the Lord had for me. My heart had changed, but I still wasn't attracted to him 100%. So like there was still, I was like, yeah, he's cute and I love his personality, but I had this picture in my mind of what I wanted my husband to look like, and that was a really big barrier for me. I was like, in future photos with my future family, I want it to look a certain way. And I just couldn't get past it. And I remember even having an anxiety attack in my kitchen, and my roommates like, are you okay? And I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, I have all this tension. Like, he's amazing. He's incredible. He adores me. He loves me. But the attraction is just not there. And so, when we started kissing, I was really uncomfortable at first, and then I realized I was starting to push kissing and push kind of physical intimacy. And I'm not saying beyond what's reasonable, but just kind of more passionate kissing, because I was I'm trying to force an attraction to come, because we're so into each other in kissing that the attraction will come. And that's what the Lord revealed to me. He's like, you're trying to force something, rather than letting it happen naturally. And I was like, okay. And I didn't tell Nick, so he just thought I was really uncomfortable, just because we were, crossing the threshold of being friends to being more than friends. And it is usually very awkward when you do cross that barrier. And for me, it was super awkward just in general for 3 days. I've heard a lot of couples who've gone from being best friends or very close friends to being a couple say yeah, there's a moment where it's super awkward, but you just kind of get over it. But for me, it was also the attraction thing. I'm like, I so want to be attracted to you because you are everything that I want apart from this idea that I have in my mind. And honestly, going to social media was bumming me out. And I was like, how does it reflect upon me? If like, I was like, what do other people think about him? Do other people think he's attractive? If they don't, does that mean I'm less attractive? It brought up a lot of these things, honestly. And he's super cute. Like, he's not ugly or anything, but he just wasn't my idea of what I had always thought I wanted. And eventually I had to tell him, because he was like, what is going on with you? And I was like, look, it had been like a week, and I was like, I have to let you know. And I told him, and obviously he was hurt, but he had I was really like, I was crying. I was like, I don't want to hurt you. I'm really sorry. Like, I just want to be honest. And he was just comforting me while I cried about hurting him, and he was obviously hurt. And then the next thing he said was, I love you. And I was like, I love you too. We had gone to Lake Tahoe for the weekend, and it was really fun. And I just realized that I loved him, and it wasn't based on attraction. It was actually based on something much deeper and much more real. And I was like, yeah, I love you. And he as well. And he was like, what? I don't think he was expecting that. And so for him, in the middle of being hurt by what I was saying, he just came around and was like, I love you. I was like, wow. Yeah, it was really amazing. And so then we were like, okay, and we started doing life together. We had our first fight, which was actually really funny. We got mad at each other, and we were like fighting in my street because we're both very passionate. And then I was like, I'll see you later. He's like, okay, bye. And I left, and I went inside, and then I went to his house a little bit later, and I was like, we good? And he's like, yeah. I was like, we were totally fine. And then we just like moved on. So it's kind of like when we fight, it's like brother and sister. Like, you have to make up, you love each other, but you like kind of annoyed in the moment, and then you have to come back. And then we hung out every day. And like 5 days later, I think it was, I woke up and I heard God say in my ear, you two are really good together. And I was like, whoa, okay. Like, I literally heard it clear as day, like somebody whispering in my ear, you two are really good together. And so I spoke to some of my friends, and I was like, hey, we are burning with passion. We are struggling with like boundaries in the area of like purity. We're just like making out all the time and we're really struggling with this. And we like brought leadership in. We let everyone know like, hey, we need a plan for this, because obviously like we love Jesus, but it was getting to the point, it's very strange, because even though I was having attraction issues, Nick would come around me and I would get really, really not attracted, I'd get really turned on is a better way of putting it. And I couldn't be near him. I was like, oh my gosh, I was like shaking almost. I was like, what is happening? It's like my body was coming alive. And I obviously then heard the Lord say this, and my friends were just like, hey, why don't you guys just get married? And I was like, that sounds like something that I could do. Yeah, like, why don't we just get married? And this was, I think, 11 days after we got together. And so Nick came over that night, and I had this in my mind. I was like, we could just get married. We could just like, we've been best friends for a bit. We know each other enough. We could totally just get married. And I asked, and then literally Nick came over that night. I said, hey, we sat down. I said, hey, so where do you think this is going? And he's like, oh, I want to marry you. And I was like, yeah, me too. And so we made a plan. We were like, okay, let's get married. Actually, I think that was 12 days. We got it, 12 days after, because we decided to get married 12 days after we started dating. And then we made a plan. We're like, cool, we're engaged. And then we were like, Nick said, I want us to speak to certain leaders tomorrow. And if they're on board, then yes, let's get married over the Christmas holidays, which was in 2 weeks' time. So we actually wanted to get married December 19th. And we were having this conversation early December, like whatever 2 weeks before that was. And he's like, if they're on board, then we can go for it. So literally the next morning we made an appointment. We went and met with these leaders, and we told them, I didn't know them, they were Nick's leaders, like, this is what we want to do. And they were amazing. They're like, hey, we don't want to control, like, they weren't ever about controlling. They're like, hey guys, there's some things that you need to think about. And they brought out a whole list of things, and they're like, it's up to you to decide. But if you decide to do this, we're going to challenge you. You have to meet with us. Like, a lot before this happens. We want to do a lot of premarital counseling with you. Like, we will walk with you. It's up, but it is ultimately your decision, and we're behind you, whatever you do, but we want you to really consider these things. And so we were like, okay. I brought another leader into my life who was less enthusiastic about it. But I was like, well, they have like a kind of understanding that you should know the person for like a year before getting married. And I was like, I don't really agree with that 100%, but I really want to honor them. So we just started like talking more and more. And then we started moving forward with the 2 weeks. So I literally in 3 days organized this entire wedding. So I'm talking everything was organized. I had like food, catering, food and catering, same thing, prepared. We had a venue, I had a dress. Somebody literally was like, oh, I have a dress, and it was in my size. It was like perfect. Like, I would have chosen it probably. It was really pretty dress. And literally had heels in my size. And they were wedges, so I wouldn't like fall into the grass. It was crazy. Like, we got Nick's clothes. We got, we got the bridesmaids and groomsmen set up. We had I had hired chairs and tables and everything that we needed. Linens, cutlery. Like, in 3 days, this wedding was like sorted. A cake, like everything was pretty much planned, and it would have gone off without a hitch. And then, and I was doing by this time, I'm still in school, I'm doing assignments, and I even had to do a business pitch. So I had like 3 days to write a professional business pitch so I could pitch to business owners. So it was like a pretty hectic couple of days. And then my leaders at school were like, hey, we want to talk to you more about this. And they just made some really good points on like the benefits of waiting and, what's the rush kind of stuff. And for us, the rush was, hey, we've got 3 weeks break over the holidays. This is going to make it a lot easier. Plus, we're already burning with passion. Now I see the wisdom in waiting. Oh, guys, I almost wish we had waited longer, honestly. I think there's so much wisdom in waiting, and we were just so impulsive. But also, I know that was God's timing for us, and it was really hard. It's been probably one of the hardest experiences in my life, and that's why I say, like, everyone wants a word from the Lord, but usually he gives you a word, a really clear word, because you need to hang on for dear life to that word because of how intense it's going to be. So, yeah, it was really, really tough, but I do believe it was the Lord's timing. And so we decided to wait. A lot of what they were saying, I was like, yeah, okay. And they were even saying, like, hey, you might not trust us, but your leaders this other leader that you really trust, they're saying, hey, you should wait. And so, like, this is like a father in your life. And I had never been like fathered before. I'd always just kind of been independent. I'd always had to make my own decisions. I'd never had anyone care enough to really show up for me in that area. And I'd always been like very self-sufficient. But I was really like, okay, I will change the course of how this is going and just submit to that. And so we decided to change that December 19th date to an engagement party instead of a wedding, which actually worked out really well because where we were going to do our wedding, which is eventually where it was, the whole family got COVID during that weekend. So it wouldn't have worked anyway. And so, I mean, we already had a ring. We picked out a ring. I'll tell you my ring story. So that Saturday where we spoke to our leaders and they were like, hey, if you want to do this, we'll support you. We went out and got a ring straight away. And I looked at all these different ring places, and some were more higher end, some were like not as high end. But the ring I found this really awesome ring in Costco. And it was blue and had diamonds around it. And I was just like, this is so me. But we kept looking because I was like, I might find something that I like more. But as the day went on, I was like, Nick, I want that ring. And he was like, okay. And I was like, that's the one that I and it wasn't even like, it wasn't the most expensive. It wasn't the most flashy. It was just really cost effective actually. And he was like, okay. I was like, that's the one. I can't stop thinking about it, so I know it's that one. And he's like, okay. And so we went and bought it straight away. And like within like, I think it was like 2 hours, I had a ring. I'm decisive. Literally the wedding dress that I picked, I looked up online. I went there, tried it on. It was the first dress I put on. Like, this is the one I'm going to get. I tried on some other ones because it was fun. But I was like, this is the dress, and that's the one I bought, and that's the one I wore. So I'm like, I'm just a very like dedicated shopper. Like I know what I want. And so even though Nick had kind of given me the ring, he hadn't done like a proper proposal, and I was a little bit sad about that. And so one of the amazing things about waiting is that God really gave us the opportunity to go and do a lot of the stuff that we would have missed out on otherwise. So Nick got to propose to me properly in this beautiful location, and really just, it was super romantic. We also waited for leaders to talk more to leaders before we set an official date, and some were still saying, hey, we think you should wait like a year. We didn't feel the Lord on that. And the word, I think April 3rd would have been 6 months since I received that word. And I really felt the Lord on that. And so we actually got married March 6th, which was, about a month before. And I just really felt the Lord on that date. And so from the day when we set the date to the day we actually got married was a month. So even though I had an idea of the things I wanted, again, we had a month to fully execute this wedding. And it was one of the best days of my life. Everyone has said, I've never seen a more relaxed bride than you. I've never seen a more at peace bride than you. We got blessed abundantly. And I think that was another thing that the Lord really provided in that he couldn't have done if we hadn't have been diligent in waiting. Because he, like, literally, guys, we had to keep a running total of them. Like, we've been blessed financially. People were like, hey, we're going to do this for you. We're going to do this for free. We're going to do this for, like, the most astronomical low amount you could possibly ever imagine to bless us. The way we even found a house, Nick was working somewhere and they had an opening for a newly remodeled, apartment, and we love it, and that's where we live now. And they were like, yep, it's yours, even though we couldn't find anywhere. Just the abundance of blessing and provision. I literally had to start a Google document to track all the abundance and all the blessing that was coming in. We got to go on a honeymoon to a really, I thought it was really cool. We both really enjoyed it, and have finances to spend on fun things to do, and to see God come through with money and money and money. And the really cool thing is, before I left Australia, the Lord had, because of COVID, the government had allowed people to access up to $20,000 out of their superannuation, which is kind of like their 401k. And that is something that I had done because I was like, I'm going to move to America again. This money will really help, and I'm planning on having multiple streams of income by the time I'm old anyway. And so I did that. And so I came back with $20,000 because of COVID. I came back with more money than before COVID. And the Lord was like, I actually gave that to you for your wedding, for you to get married. And so that actually was able to cover everything that we needed and more. And it will also cover a green card application, everything else that we have to do. It is just covering that. And then some, and so the Lord just abundantly provided. And it was just such a, even the flowers, we had thousands of dollars worth of flowers that we did not pay a cent for, because the family whose house we used, the wife loves floristry, and she was like, it's actually our gift to you. So she bought all the flowers, she put them together, she put together my bouquet, all the boutonnieres and everything, because I actually was like, I'm good, we don't need flowers. I'll just get some Trader Joe's bouquets and walk with them. And she was like, oh my goodness, no. And so she did the archway, and it was all completely covered. She was like, I just want to bless you guys on your wedding day. Our friends, guys, if you're going to get married, delegate. People said, hey, I'd love to help. And I was like, cool, can you take care of this, this, and this? And so we had one person who was emceeing, who took care of a lot of the MC stuff. One person who was doing sound, who brought their own speakers so that we had sound for music and everything. We had people who came and set up the day before. We had a small army. We had people who, hey, can you be in charge of communion? Can you be in charge of getting the tables set up and looking nice? Yep. And so everyone literally just did their part. And we, obviously Nick and I did a lot of work too, but actually we just kind of showed up and helped everybody else kind of coordinate what their role was, because they so badly wanted to help, that actually it was a really stress-free wedding. We had some friends literally show up 2 days before who were power washing the back deck for us, or scrubbing floors. You really learn who your friends are around a wedding because of who shows up, who wants to help. And our friends were incredible. And then when we went when we left and went on our honeymoon, they were the ones who stayed and cleaned the entire house, front and back, and did everything the way that we needed to. And took back all our rentals, and guys, literally, like, we even asked, hey, can you, like, Nick got the rentals with certain people, and like every bit of the wedding, hey, can you make the dessert? So one of my bridesmaids made the dessert. We did prophetic words for everyone, and I actually like got my bridesmaids to write prophetic words, because I was going to do some, but I was getting like a little bit stressed for time, and they're like, hey, we will do them for you to take that off your plate. Like, I got to have a bridal shower. Nick got to have we call it a bucks night. I don't know, bachelor party. It was basically a bonfire, but he got to have that too. It was just really incredible. Seeing how the Lord provided. And then I'll never forget on our wedding day, it was like the funnest day, honestly. Like, with my bridesmaids, I didn't want to leave. I was having so much fun with my bridesmaids, and we're all getting dressed up, and it was so much fun. Like, we didn't even really take photos. We took a few, and then I'm like, we're good, thanks. Like, we don't need heaps, because we were just like, let's go and enjoy our friends. We had not one family member there, not one of Nick's family, not one of mine. Because of COVID, his family wasn't comfortable coming, and especially because of COVID, my family couldn't fly in, and so we had friends that were like family to us. And we even had somebody playing worship as we walked out, worshiping and playing the songs as we walked in. Like, it was just so incredible. But I'll never forget in my vows, this is the other cool thing that I want to leave you on. I had actually in my vows I included this, and it was this awesome story about when I was young that the Lord reminded me of. I had often dreamt about, who my husband would be and what he would be like from a very young age. And I remember being between probably 8 till 10, and we would have sleepovers, girl sleepovers. And I would sleep over at my friend's house, and we would talk about our future husbands. And we'd go, he's going to look like this, he's going to be like this. And I always started my list with saying, his name will be Nick. His name will be Nick. Like, I just always thought my husband's name would be Nick. And at the time, I was really into Backstreet Boys, so I thought Nick was a really hot guy name. And I was like, his name's going to be Nick, and he's going to do this, this, and this. And it was just really cool. I always say, like, it turns out I am more prophetic than I thought I was, and I was very prophetic at a young age, even though I wasn't a Christian. But yeah, that was always something. And I actually have dated another guy called Nick, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the fruition of what I was thinking of when I was a kid. And obviously I didn't marry him, but yeah, his name will be Nick. And I just remember thinking, wow, Lord, like, just these stories, just these bits that come into play are just so incredible. And he's so in the season. The other really big thing that I actually forgot to mention was that like 2 years before I met Nick, a year and a half, beginning of 2019, the Lord has started showing me swans. And he has started showing me swans everywhere. Everywhere I went, there was a swan. And I was like, it all started when I had a vision. Literally, like, an open vision on the ceiling. I could see swans. No, in my mind's eye, sorry, I had my eyes closed. I could see swans, and when I opened my eyes, I could see them on the ceiling. And I asked God, what does that mean? And it said, it's the promise for your future spouse. And then I cannot make this up. Almost every single day of my life since then, I've seen a swan or something to do with a swan, or heard somebody say something about a swan. Nick still can't believe it. I'm like, look, I have so many photos, thousands of photos in my phone. Some days it's 5. Actually, the day that I got my visa to come to America in the embassy, that day I saw 5 swans. And I knew that the Lord was saying that, like, my partner was, my husband was going to be American, or I'm going to meet him in America. And the Lord just never stopped, even now. And then the really interesting thing was, so I knew it was coming. And in the first year of my school in 2019 to 2020, I thought it was going to be my first boyfriend that I had. And when that ended, I was like, okay, I'm just having faith. And I kept seeing them. It just kept reinforcing the promise, the promise, the promise. And I was really diligent about taking photos and being like, okay, God, I'm believing for your promises. I'm believing for your promises. If anyone knows me really well, they know how much I hate birds. I'm super deathly afraid of birds. I always say, if there's a bird around, you'll probably see a back-shaped hole in the wall. I'm out of there. I hate it. I live in a country where birds attack you and it's super scary, so I can't be around birds. And so I knew that this couldn't be from me because I would never choose to see a swan. But the Lord was so like, hey, this is coming for you. And so when I met Nick, I was like, oh, this is, and my friends who knew, they're like, do you think he's your swan? And I was like, I think he is. And then as we got closer and closer, I was like, oh yeah, he's the one that the Lord has been talking to me about. And the really interesting thing is, it hasn't stopped. I still see swans everywhere. And as I've been talking to the Lord, I'm like, Lord, what does this mean? Because I found my swan now. But you keep showing me all these swans. And he's basically saying like, hey, it's time to get other couples together. Like, this isn't just a word for you and your marriage. This is a word for marriages that are going to come from you, come from the things that you do. And so literally on my vision board, it's not really a vision board, it's just like lots of photos on my wall. But on my left, from where I'm sitting right now, there's a picture of two swans coming together and making a love heart. And that was my promise for my relationship, for the story and the destiny that the Lord had for me. But I actually keep that there to remind myself, you know what? I actually am going to have a part to play in a lot of other couples coming together, a lot of kingdom, Holy Spirit, lay down lovers of Jesus. And that's my reminder of the commission and the mandate that the Lord has put on my life in this season to actually bring that about. And then underneath it, I have a picture of a couple on their wedding day. And I've written 100,000 marriages on it, because in my lifetime, I want to see 100,000 laid down lovers of Jesus. Well, actually 200,000 laid down lovers of Jesus find each other, and I want to see 100,000 marriages. And so everything that we're doing is, how can we bring that about? How can we help as many people as possible? Because I truly believe that generations are changed. Culture is transformed by amazing godly families, which start with amazing godly marriages, which start with amazing godly people finding each other. And so that's really the ministry on my heart. Now that I found my swan, as corny as it sounds, I'm like, how can I help other people to find their swan, to find their person that the Lord has for them, and to do it in such a place of like abundance and overflow and joy and health and hope. And yeah, that's my story. I've been talking for a while, so if you have tracked with me this far, congratulations. I hope my story encourages you. It's real. Like, I don't want to hide things. Like, we didn't always go about things the best possible way in hindsight, but you know what? Relationships can be messy. They can catch you off guard. They can bring out not the best in you at the moment. You know, you're like, oh, this is not how I would act under normal circumstances, but I'm so flustered and there's so much and I don't know what to do and I don't know what the right thing is. And God can still really work mightily through that. And so I just want to pray for you today. Lord, I just thank you for each listener that's made it this far into the podcast, Lord. I thank you for hope. I thank you for the swan partner that they have, Lord. The swan that's out there waiting for them, that they'll come together and be united for their entire lives, Lord. I thank you for the beauty and the gift of marriage and the gift of covenant. And I thank you that you are writing their love stories right now. And so I pray, Lord, that you'll speak to them. You'll speak to them about the partners that you have for them. Lord, I pray that you'll speak to them about the season of life that they're in. I pray that you'll speak to them about what they can be working on right now, what they need to be focused on right now. And that you'll just be so close to them and such a great comforter as well. And I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.